What is up, most distinguished patrons of this channel? Today, I'm going to talk about my loadout that I use at work along with what I carry on my person every day. So with that said, let's get into it. So I've been talking with a number of viewers about tools and things that I carry and good idea of tools to buy if you're running like side businesses to do mobile welding, all sorts of stuff. And I thought, well, why wouldn't I just do a video to talk about some important things that you probably should have? Now, I'm not going to really be covering equipment like welders and generators and engine drives and all of that stuff. But what I will do is I'm going to cover all of the tools that I carry on myself on a daily basis when I'm on the job, as well as what's in my Milwaukee packout, because that's what I have for a rolling toolbox. I keep a lot of stuff in there, and I am a steam fitter. I weld pipe for a living. But my loadout per se is probably a little bit different than most people, and it's based on just experience working around metal. So you'll probably find a lot of the stuff that I have will be useful for you as well. So to start things off, I'm going to go through everything that's on my body right now because I just got off of work about an hour ago, and now that I'm in the tin shed, I'm pretty much equipped just like I was at work earlier. So let's talk about what I have on me. Out of everything here, this is probably one of my most used tools. This one I just picked up because the one I had that was identical to it, I must have left on a job site somewhere, and I'm not sure where it is, and it's too useful that I can't go without it. Now, I do carry a backup to this in my toolbox that we'll go through later, but this is the most useful tool if you're into steam fitting or any kind of general purpose work, welding work too. You need something like this, be it to grab a piece of hot metal, break a stuck rod off of something. I mean, this is an invaluable tool. Now, I'm not really a tool snob. I'll buy tools from anyone that I think makes a decent tool. This, I guess it's pronounced Knipex, is what I have found I like the best. Now, I do have a set of, well, many sets of channel locks, but I like this better, and the reason is simple. These are incredibly thin, very lightweight, and they fit in a pocket, and they don't tear your pockets or your pants up really bad. This is probably my favorite general purpose tool that I own. I highly recommend you look at this. One of the things that's probably different for me than with most people is I focus on how light of a tool can I get, how reliable and strong can I have it while still being light and small. I focus heavily on very compact tools because I don't like carrying bricks in my pocket all day. It's just annoying to me. Not only do my pants fall down because of all of the weight, but it's just uncomfortable, especially if you got to crawl in some tight spot to make a weld. Do you really want like a normal thick channel locks in your pocket? It's just going to be a nuisance. And that's why I find this and so many of the other tools I carry, I focus heavily on thin, lightweight stuff. And these definitely fit the bill. If you don't have a pair, get one. Now, this is somewhat specific to the pipe welding trades, and that is a wedge. This one I modified by putting a strong magnet on a key ring on it, because I can stick it on a pipe and have it readily available. This is one of those things that it walks off all the time. Now, normally it's somebody asks to borrow it and they never return it. Well, with this, you know, I'm never going to leave it somewhere on the floor where it's going to get kicked under something, never to be seen again, or fall down multiple stories where nobody wants to go and get it, including me. So this is a very valuable tool in the pipe trades for general purpose. I don't know that you're going to use this too much, but for me, I always have one. And what's funny to me is almost nobody I ever work with ever has one in their pocket, and they always come to me looking for one because they know I have one. And not only do I have one, today somehow this one wound up in my pocket as well. And it's funny because I'm going to have to tune this up a little bit. It's all bent because guess what? I borrowed it to someone and they beat it up a little bit. Oh well. Now, writing instruments are a big deal. If you don't have one of these, guess what? You're going to be looking around your shop for a while to find a pencil. So it always pays to have multiple means of writing on stuff. I personally buy these Milwaukee Inksol brand. They are marginally better than maybe a standard Sharpie. I don't really see that these are that great. Maybe your opinion differs on them, but hey, you can get them at almost anywhere that sells Milwaukee tools, and they're good enough to do the job. I always have one of these. The problem with these, they put a black mark on stuff. Well, that's fine, but if like you're welding on pipe that's already painted black, you can't see the mark hardly. That's why it pays to have something like this. This has a silver lead in it, and it writes very well on dark colored stuff. So it always pays to have yourself a Sharpie, something lighter. And recently, about a month ago, I bought one of these from Markall. It's called a trades marker, and it comes with a bunch of leads for this, different colors. And this is like a grease pencil, but it writes really good. I don't know if you can see it. I sprayed this table down with WD-40 and it writes on it no problem. I find that this is actually one of the best all-around purpose marking tools that I've ever used. Highly recommend buying one of these or some form of a grease pencil. They just work better in my opinion than the silver streaks like this. This thing ended up following me home accidentally. I'm going to return this to the foreman whose tool it goes to. I had to switch out to hard rock and it had a nut on it already. Didn't need this. This wound up in my pocket. Guess what? Took it home for me. I will return that to them. Likewise, if you're like me and you use soapstones a fair amount, your dryer area is probably full of buckets of soapstones. I actually didn't bring one home with me today because I use these to mark instead of the soapstone. I always have a small, compact 12-foot tape measure on me. A lot of guys I know have those big 25 or 30 or 35, whatever foot tape. And for me, I'm often doing welding in too tight of a spot to want to have that big of a tape measure on me because it's going to catch on stuff. It's heavy. I don't like heavy and bulky. Something like a 12-foot tape takes care of most of what I need. And odds are somebody I'm working with, if we need to measure something longer than that, they probably have a longer tape and I'll use theirs rather than carrying a large one myself. Key-wise, this is probably the most overpriced tool I've ever bought, this little adjustable wrench. I think they're like 20 bucks, probably cheaper on Amazon, but for whatever reason, this thing has become more useful than it should be. I always find myself at least a couple times a week where I'm like, man, you know, if only I had an open end wrench on me for this little nut or something, and then it dawns on me, I have an epiphany. Oh, I have one on my keys. And this thing is kind of a little lifesaver. I wouldn't recommend spending what they want on it. If you can find it for cheaper than that, or maybe buy a knockoff that's decently rated, buy that. I mean, it's not that this isn't a quality tool. It's just, it's very expensive for what you get, but also very useful. Likewise, probably one of the most useful tools that you would have on your key rings, this is a portable tweezers. This is called the Silver Gripper, I guess, or Sliver Gripper, something like that. And they're available on Amazon. I did a whole video on how useful these are. Get yourself one of these and put it on your key ring. You will not regret it. Let's talk about some levels now. These two I carry on myself at any given time while I'm working. They're my two favorite levels. I also have a bunch of levels from pretty much every company you can imagine. And these I just gravitate towards because they're just the easiest to carry. They're light, they're nice to use, they're very easy to read, they're trustworthy. Like everything about them, they just work. And I especially like the little belt holder for this. I always have a place to put it so I don't leave it somewhere. Now this little guy here, I got made fun of countless times by guys saying, oh, look at that little useless level. And then next thing you know, they're asking to borrow it because for whatever reason, their standard size level doesn't work for what they're trying. And guess what? This does. You can take measurements off the side of it. It does have a magnet as well as the bottom. And this thing weighs such a little amount that you don't even notice it's in your pocket yet. It's very useful. If there was one tool out of all of this that you probably should buy and put in your pocket, would be this guy right here. Is so useful. It's just beyond words useful. Now this is the simple 2-vial. I also carry the 3-vial in my toolbox. We'll look at that for doing 45-degree angles. A majority of what I do, this works fine. Now, a lot of guys don't like this setup because if you want to use the side of the level to verify something is plumb or level, it's rounded and it's not designed to be used this way versus a lot of levels of this type. You can technically do that, but that's why I carry this. If I need to see if some small space where this won't fit on this way is level, I'll use this. So I rather carry this guy and then have this for small surfaces rather than doing that janky stuff like this that a lot of guys I work with that probably isn't even that accurate. I would put this up against doing that with any level that's out there. I just don't see that being that accurate. I actually bought a bunch of different ones like this, different companies. I'm going to do a review video in the future, something to look forward to when I got more time. Now, since I do a fair amount of stainless TIG welding, I have this, which is all my TIG tungsten. Let's take a look and see what I got in here. Shockingly, these aren't dipped too much. I only got one or two that I need to sharpen. I always keep a spare collet in there with my tungsten because I swear almost every time I pick up a TIG torch from someone, it's missing the collet or the collet's twisted. So I always keep a spare, and I always have a ton of them sharpened ready to go because you don't want to be the idiot that gets put on some TIG work and then you don't have any sharpened tungsten, you don't have a collet, and you can't do the job. So now let's talk about everyday carry knives and tools. This is a Microtech Ultratech or something. I don't even really know. I'm not a knife guru or an expert. I just know when I like a particular knife and have abused it and it works. This has definitely seen a ton of abuse. I carry it every day and have so for over a year now. Now, this is an out the front knife. This may not be legal in your state, your area, your country. Consult the local laws where you're at to know if this is legal. Now, a lot of people knock these and say they're just for show, blah, 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 and I totally agree with that to a certain extent. The difference is, though, for me, I often have gloves on. I might be in a negative 20, 30 degree freezer, and when you have gloves on your hand, the ability to pull this out of your pocket, put it out and put it back in while holding onto it without having to open your hand and fumble with some sort of mechanism, to do it with one hand is very valuable because I'm not likely to drop it and it gives me more control. That's why I have always liked out the front knives, because I can one hand open and close them and they're pretty safe overall. Now this Microtech, it's the first time I ever bought one of these. Like I said, I've used this for a year and so far it's been pretty reliable. Now, would I recommend something this expensive for most of you as an everyday carry? Probably not. It's just that for my usage, this worked great. And unfortunately, this style of knife across the board typically are all $200 plus to get something decent, reliable. But again, I do find this very valuable and I do like it a lot. Now, this is a fairly new tool to me. This is the Leatherman Arc. I previously had a Leatherman Surge. I actually really liked that, and I misplaced it or it was stolen from me. I have no idea. It's just long gone. I can't find it, which is unfortunate because I love that tool. I was faced with a dilemma on buying a new multi-tool, and I thought I would give this a shot because I like the fact that it has a clip on it and it is very small and compact. It has a very durable knife made out of Magna Cut, which again, I'm not a knife guru. I could really care less of what a particular knife is made out of. All I care about is that it's sharp and it holds an edge and it lasts. And this, so far I've used it for the past month, has held up very good. One thing I will recommend to you guys, I've bought a lot of multi-tools and the only ones that I think are worth buying, honestly, are Leatherman. I bought Gerber ones and a bunch SOG and all those other companies, and I just find that the quality of them are junk. Now, granted, I never bought a $200 Gerber one, if there is even a $200 Gerber one, but all of them that I've ever owned from Gerber have just, they've failed to meet my expectations. Leatherman has definitely met and exceeded my expectations. So if I had one recommendation on brand for these, buy Leatherman. I don't care which one. I would just stay away from any of the cheaper ones and definitely stay away from Gerber, but that's my opinion. So you've seen all of the tools that I carry on a daily basis. It's a pretty simple loadout and it works for me. Now let's look at what's in my toolbox that I carry around job to job. Here's the loadout I carry in my top box. Some of the things that I normally would have in here are gone because they're more or less consumables and I'll have to reload them next time I'm in the shop. Let's start out in this top right corner. I have a couple old used lenses. I probably should have thrown those out, but hey, backups, I guess, to backups. USB cables for random things, always pays to have a spare one of those. Electrical tape. Probably the most useful tool or consumable in here. I can't count how many times where I asked somebody for electrical tape and nobody ever seemed to have any. Very useful, definitely must have, carry some on you or near you. Here's the portable tape measure I normally keep on me. The little lanyard finally broke a couple weeks ago and it's just beat up, so I bought this guy. I've used it a little bit. It's pretty nice. I like the fact it has a magnet on the back side and this clip is really nice for pocket use. I'm going to start carrying this a lot more. I'm probably the only guy you'll ever see that carries the shoot-a-light, it's called. It is a spark thrower. There we go, finally works. For starting a torch. I do not like with gloves using a traditional striker. They're just annoying to use, especially because all of them I seem to find on job sites are wore plumb out and don't work anyways, so I keep my own. I always have a deburr tool handy with spare blades. I'm not the kind of guy that likes working with really sharp edges on stuff, and I don't like leaving sharp edges for other guys. These fake carbon fiber boxes hold backup lenses. So I have cheater lenses in here. I have an additional auto darkening. I have a couple fixed shades. You never know when you need a backup lens for your primary hood. I also keep in my truck a secondary welding hood in case my primary one fails, because hey, I can weld with no gloves. I could probably weld with no shirt and no shoes. Definitely could weld in sandals, but I can't weld with a beer bottle for a welding hood. So this guy here, I have a couple spare plastic lenses as well as cheater lenses, because once again, when you're blind like me, you need the cheater lenses backups, because again, if you can't see clearly, you probably can't do quality welds. This is a precision machined wedge that gives different thicknesses. Now, I'm pretty good at setting the gap that I want on pipe, and the guys that fit for me are pretty good as well. So this doesn't come out too often, but it is useful to have if you're ever wondering what the gap is on something. This is for welding small pipe. Typically when I TIG weld real thin stainless, like Schedule 10, 1 inch, I would use this, wrap it around the pipe and clamp to this so I know that I have a very good ground. I'm not a big fan of putting ground clamp directly on pipe, because what I find is, depending on how wore that ground clamp is, it can arc off to the pipe, and that's no good. Now you got a real pickle of a problem. These are all old lenses that are typically pretty beat up. I mean, some of them might be usable, but it's kind of like the scrap bin of lenses, where if I'm down to where in dire straits and I got no other option, I use that. Over here, I have lens wipes. These work great for safety glasses as well as for welding lenses. This is probably one of the most important things that I keep in here. It's called Silvex Wound Gel. This stuff works great on burns. The healing is a lot better, and the probability of getting infected is far less using that. Over here, I keep a Zippo in here. So an old school Zippo. This is kind of really a backup to, I guess, a torch striker like that, but generally they frown upon starting a torch with one of those, but you never know when you might need a lighter. I honestly wouldn't recommend one of these as a just in case. I would just get a butane one that's sealed. They tend to last a lot longer. Like, I don't even know if this sucker would start, to be honest. It's probably dry already on fuel. Let's see. Yep, see. Not too smart. Get a normal lighter. Over here, got spare tungsten. These are all cut down. They're just in this tube. These are all spare gas lenses. They're medium size and jumbos, because depending on what size pipe I'm welding, what bevel angle, all sorts of things, you need a different cup size if you're going to walk the cup. So I've picked up a lot of them over the jobs I've done, to where I'm pretty much set up for any diameter pipe I would need to weld. Have a TIG finger here, very useful thing. I actually don't use this that much anymore, but when you need it, it saves you from getting burned, makes it easier to weld. Over here, collets. These are the wedge style. It's what I prefer instead of the split style. I always have a bunch of these in this, and you know what? These things last so long. If you only have 2 in your box, you'll never go through them in your lifetime. You'll lose them before you actually wear them out. In the center here, So I have a bunch of random tools. This Stabila here is one that can do 45-degree angles. It's a lot bigger than the normal one, which is why I don't tend to carry it. I like the smaller, lighter weight of the standard one, and it's not super often that I absolutely need a 45-degree angle. I have a metal ruler here, very handy thing to have. I generally keep this in my pocket. It just happens to be tossed in here because I didn't need it. A marking pencil that's a spare. A pen of multiple colors. This is great for doing isometric drawings or something because I have multiple colors to indicate multiple types of pipe. And then I have 2 different kinds of files. You never know when you need a file, so always carry at least 1 or 2 of those. Over here, this I picked up and I like because oftentimes I weld in places you can't see anything, and this has an LED light in it, and it makes it pretty easy to read when you're kind of in a dark area. The only downside is these vials are pretty cloudy with the light on. They look fine without it, but cloudy with it, but hey, I guess it beats using a flashlight to read things. The moment of truth. Let's see what's in this disaster. Good grief. All right, I need to clean this out a little bit. Good grief, I gotta organize that junk drawer. Anyways, this is the stuff that I normally carry in there, and there's a lot more than what you see here. A lot of it's simply just duplicates, backups to what I had in my top boxer that I carry, but this is kind of like the more unique items, I guess. I always have sets of adjustable wrenches of different sizes, very important. These bolt cutters are probably the most useful thing if you TIG weld because you can snip big stainless wire or even cut tungsten with these. Very useful. I have a spare TIG torch with a flex head. This I can attach to most any TIG setup on a welder, and it gives me a smaller body torch with a flex neck. It's very, very common that I wind up on a job site, have to do some TIG welding in a tough spot, and I have a rigid neck with a gigantic body on it. This solves that issue. Now, this is not a micro torch by any means, but it's a lot smaller than a lot of them that I run into on job sites. Very useful to have if I need it. I have a Nightcore headlamp. I'm a big fan of Nightcore flashlights. I always have that in my box. Likewise, I always have one of their flashlights. Big fan of them. They're super bright. I mean, that's stupidly bright for what it is, and they're USB rechargeable, very good flashlights. I've used these for years, have never had any issue. Back up to the normal tape measure. I carry simple 12-footer. This one's pretty much brand new, and that other one's getting pretty worse for wear, so I might swap them out soon. I always have a stick rule. I generally don't carry this on me. A lot of guys I work with always do, and I just steal theirs. I always have multiple diamond discs on me for sharpening tungsten. This one I just threw in there. It's brand new. The other one I had wore out, but this is a very fast way in an angle grinder to get a very nice, perfect point on tungsten. Keep Brillo pads. These work great for cleaning stuff. You never know when you might need to scrub something with acetone or a cleaner. You'd be surprised how often you use these. Very handy. Always keeps them on you. I keep a ball peen hammer in my box. I don't use this very often because every place I go generally has a set of hammers and I use theirs instead. But more than once I found myself wishing I had a hammer and I simply didn't have one. I typically have 2 magnetic mats with me. This one is an Icon that just came out. I've been testing this out for like a month now. I'm actually going to have a video on what my thoughts are on this coming out soon. But this is a very decent mat for 20 bucks. It's not my favorite. I like the professionals from Mac and Snap-on better, but not bad. This I can put on pipe or on something near I'm working on, and then put this on there and my other tool, and it doesn't just fall off. I'm not stepping on them. I don't have to carry them in my pocket. This is a very useful tool for pretty much anyone. I do have a 25-foot tape measure. I never carry this brick on me though. This is always in the toolbox, just in case somebody, like nobody on a job has one. I'd rather steal somebody else's to use temporarily. This is my pocket mask. I took the lenses out of it just so that it wouldn't get damaged while it was in the box, but I did a review video on this, and I'll tell you what, I keep this with me everywhere I go, and when I don't have it is when I need it. Like last week, I had to weld some really tight spot welds, socket welds on 1.5-inch pipe, And if I had this, I would have got it done an hour sooner and I would have got paid the same. So it was kind of unfortunate I didn't have this. It definitely pays to have something like this if you find yourself welding in tight spots. Over here is my own custom made, I didn't make the rod holder here, but this is basically an Amazon special rod holder. The bottom blew out of it, so it's kind of being held together with tape. I'm going to have to pick up a new one of these or make it myself. And this here is a mag switch to where I can put it on what I'm welding or what I'm working on, and it stays where I put it. I really like that over trying to clip it to something with like a carabiner. I'm not a big fan of those. This is far more useful. Highly recommend you make yourself something like this. Going back to flashlights, I typically always have this O-light. This charges this unit, so you can hook this up to USB and charge this battery pack, but this little pocket flashlight is awesome. I'll grab it out of the holder in the morning, keep it in my pocket, and then go and use it during the day. And then at the end of the shift, I go throw it in here and it will charge it up when I'm not using it, and then I can come in the next day and I'm perfectly charged up. This little battery pack will charge this, I think, 3 times. And like I said, you got to charge the battery holder separately. I also have a whole set of gas lenses and all of the components for different size. These are for mediums in case I need to get in a tighter spot than what the jumbos get in. I also have some micros in here. Need that occasionally. I also carry a full TIG rig with a flex neck gas valve, of course, a scratch start TIG rig that I use occasionally, because once again, it goes back to the, well, if they don't have what I need, which is somewhat common, and I need to do some critical weld that can't fail, guess what? I'll use my own equipment that I know is good, that's set up for how I like to weld, because I don't want to screw around with somebody else's broken equipment, which is why I carry this. Now, I have a giant number 12 cup on this. I normally wouldn't use that big of a cup, but I set this up to get into a tight spot on a particular job. It worked fine for that. But it's something that you want to have multiples of. Always have at least 2 TIG torches if you TIG weld, because it doesn't take much to cut through one of these or have an accident where it stops working for you and you need something else. Likewise, I have a Stinger V that I keep with me. This is one of those things where a lot of guys maybe don't like this particular style. I find that it works really well. And the biggest issue I have on job sites is I always seem to find the worst, most blown out Stinger that's almost useless. And I just get sick of being put in charge of doing like critical welds and having something that won't even hold a 332/70/18 without it moving around in the jaw. And that's why I carry my own Stinger. Now, if I show up to a site and they have a good quality Stinger that I don't have to worry about, then I'll use theirs. Otherwise, for critical welds or where I just don't have access to something that's decent, I will use this to get the job done, because again, my name's on the work. Why do I want to use subpar equipment to try and, get something done and make my life harder? Now, this guy here, this clamp isn't super useful in the pipe welding world, but what I've found is I can use this to clamp on stuff and use it as a steady rest, if anything. I would recommend, if you're into general work, general fabrication, it pays to have some really nice clamps like this. Now, last but not least, toilet paper. Now, I kind of have a messed up sense of humor that I got this because people get a kick out of it, but I'll tell you what, many a time have I found myself on a construction site where there's no TP in the porta-john, and guess what? What are you going to do? Cut up your shirt? Well, hopefully you got a multi-tool or a knife to do that, but you don't want to find yourself in there with nothing to wipe with, so that's where this comes in. And I actually have a bunch of other funny ones kind of like this that I tend to use, because, hey, you got to have a sense of humor about things. So there you have it. That's what I keep in my loadout and what I keep on myself. Now, you're probably wondering, well, what about pipe wrenches and bigger tools and all that? And the truth is, my employer provides all of that, and they also provided a lot of the consumables that I have in everything that I showed you. So I don't simply need to carry that kind of stuff, which is good, because I don't really want to carry pipe wrenches around. I generally show up to a job site and those kind of tools are in a gang box, and then I use them and put them back as needed. But I carry this stuff with me simply because I found myself in too many situations where if you rely on other people to have stuff, like even something as simple as tungsten or a working electrode holder, you're simply going to be let down. And because you're the guy or the girl that has to solve the problems, aka do the welds and make sure things don't leak and do fit ups and all of that, by not having the right tools for the job, you're going to look like an idiot, even though you weren't provided with the right tools, which luckily, for the most part, things have been pretty good for me as far as that's concerned. But I'm kind of particular. I like certain tools, and that's why I carry them. And like I said earlier, I'm a big proponent of small, lightweight, compact tools to carry on yourself. I do not like big, heavy tools because they take up too much room, they pull your pants down, and they're just annoying. Yeah, if the job requires a 100-foot tape measure or something, yeah, I'll go and get one, but I'm not carrying it on me, and I don't see the need to carry big, heavy stuff, even in these boxes, just stuff that I generally need. So with that said, if you got any favorite tools that you like to carry on yourself or recommendations for other people's, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm sure people will read them and learn from them, because I'm just one guy. So with that said, thanks for sticking around. Until next time.